T-Dog, J-Boy, and me, I'm Lugs. Our pride and joy is pumping our mugs. Be careful, kids, it could get rough. We're flipping our lids on sports and other stuff.
Welcome to Sport Weasel Central. I'm Lugs.
I'm J-Boy.
And I'm T-Dog.
This is Sports and Other Stuff. Here's our headlines this week. College sports being dropped. The Big Ten short schedule. And whether we'll have NFL or not, we break it down for you anyway. Stanford University, which has one of the most successful athletic departments in the country, said it's financially unsustainable and will permanently drop 11 sports at the end of this coming academic year. It's one of the richest universities in the country. Gentlemen, what does this tell us?
Tells us that football and basketball is paying for everything else, I think. And, I just looked up some of the data, and mostly it's like the sports that are being cut are the so-called Olympic sports, like track and field, tennis, lacrosse, field hockey, soccer, swimming, and diving. So, I mean, those sports wouldn't make money, really. But what I have to wonder about is, so you eliminate those sports and it eliminates scholarships. How's that going to affect, kids who found a way to get a scholarship, and do they have to take out more loans? I mean, it's broader than just, walking away from a sport.
Yeah, at Stanford, it was something like 240 athletes are affected by that move.
Like Lugs points out, the sad thing is you're talking about a bunch of kids that obviously, if you're probably going to Stanford, if you're going to Stanford on an athletic scholarship, yeah, you're not only fairly bright, but also you probably had other options that you're like, well, this is the best option at Stanford. And now if they cut these kids outright from, like, are they going to be able to find another place too? Because across the board, this is probably going to happen if a place with as deep as pockets as Stanford is cutting. So,
yeah, they're sitting on a $26 billion endowment, and this is going to cost them and save them, they thought, $70 million, or they're having a $70 million shortfall.
Ohio State is estimating a loss of $300 million in revenue. I don't know how they calculate that, but
is that just because of Urban Meyer or what?
I guess it was his buyout.
Or a buy-in, maybe. I don't know.
And I will say one more a quote from the Notre Dame athletic director, Jack Swarbrick. He says a lot of colleges and universities will shut down completely.
There's some talk about that, especially small liberal arts schools that are scrapping to get by anyway with limited funds and really count on students to be there. It's tricky.
I was going to go back to, speaking of Notre Dame, does this also, in terms of all these dominoes that happen, does this finally force Notre Dame to have to just join the ACC outright?
Well, they lose their games to Wisconsin, USC, and I can't remember the third school that's non-conference.
Yeah, I know they can't control a whole lot this year, but I'm saying because of this, does this finally make them give up their independence as a football team?
Good question.
It feels like it almost has to, right? You don't have that extra level of protection.
And they're half and half, right? They're half ACC and half what they choose.
6 Correct. ACC games is the current agreement. 6 ACC football games, yeah.
Sort of half and half, yeah. Yeah, it's strange times. But I think it points out the fact that probably most of those sports were losing money and have been losing money all along. It's just that they were able to make up for it with basketball and football revenue.
And Lugs, you also missed men and women's fencing. squash,
Ooh,
and, of course, synchronized swimming.
wow.
Yes, sir.
Did they get water polo?
Not on the list,
I
but
did.
co-ed sailing is on the list.
Well, now I saw where the athletic directors are real sensitive about cutting women's sports because you could get into Title IX violations, and that could cut back on what you get from, I guess, state and federal funding to the universities as well.
Yeah, that co-ed sailing is taught by Lovey and Thurston Howell.
Ooh. On a 3-hour cruise?
Maybe. As far as you can get there. All right, should we move on to our second topic? Why not? The Big Ten announced it will go to a conference only, speaking of, season for all fall sports, including football, due to the pandemic. So really, the question to you guys, is this just a placeholder? What are the odds we're going to have college football at all this fall? ?
I think it's 50-50 at best, personally, just because of the what's going on right as we record this. You know, spikes are coming in places, Florida or Arizona, that are pretty substantial compared to recent spikes. And I don't see how you can justify fans in the stands. And if you don't have fans in the stands, you lose all of that revenue of ticket sales and food and drink. So I'm saying 50-50 at this point.
Kind of echoing what Lug says, last Wednesday, the Ivy League schools voted to drop or to move all fall sports at least to the spring, or just outright let them go for the whole I guess full year. And if you go back to college basketball, they were one of the first leagues to end their tournament prematurely. Like, they were willing to jump. They were the canary in the coal mine. And it feels like where a lot of teams followed suit because it was an outbreak, they're being a little too bullish right now, where it's like kind of what Lug said is like it still hasn't plateaued or started to decline. It's still in certain areas ascending. I don't know how you can be like, oh, it's gonna be fine. We could just still have games. And it seems. I mean, it's completely illogical. Is I think what I'm trying to say.
And how about that Lou City soccer game locally? They pulled it off somehow with about half the fans in attendance. Do you think that's the model by which all others will be judged and set up?
I think it was a good start from what I saw. I didn't see the game itself, so I just saw a couple of the stories about the game, and the fans spread out, and they weren't cheering like they normally do and singing and that sort of thing.
Sounded like this, kind of like.
So
that was a goal score right there. Okay, yeah. Well, we got the idea.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't know, they're not comparable, but it's almost like with certain restaurants that are either like just going all takeout or not. It's sustainable for now, but I mean, we don't even know how long term this thing will be. So to be like, oh, we're gonna, I mean, it's good to use it as an operating for now, but like, how much revenue are they actually generating from having that many fans? Particularly because they just constructed it. So they're clearly in the red right now. I mean, so,
they did get some TV exposure.
ESPN, It was on the Deuce, right? It was.
And I would imagine it got some ratings that it wouldn't have gotten before, just because it was the only game in town, sort of.
Okay.
But I don't think you're right. I think you're right. You're not going to make up all the salary revenue and just general upkeep with that model.
But doesn't it seem crazy? So people in the stands are wearing masks, or most of them were supposed to anyway. And then you have soccer players going full bore at each other, just out there sharing sweat, blood, sweat, and tears on the field. Is there something wrong with this picture?
Well,
Well, I mean, who cares about a soccer player anyway, really? So,
Wow.
Get,
Step away
know
from
what?
the
I hope
microphone.
I hope you-
Lightning's going to strike. Watch out.
I hope you trip on a branch while you're walking out in the backwood right now.
Wow. Okay, let's get back to football for a second. I want to ask a question. If we move everything to the spring like the Ivy League is talking about, so you start in what, February, March? How do you then go play football again next fall when you've only had a month or two of rest? You can't do that, can you?
That's the
I mean, you said dominoes. This is the total dominoes.
Well, the other one that's interesting too, and obviously not to say they can't pull back from this, the NFL's already said they're not moving the draft. So if you move college football back, say teams are in contention to be in the playoffs of college football, certain guys will just opt out because like, no, I'm going to be a top 5 pick. It's like, and it's happening right now. I can't get injured. Like I just got drafted. I mean, again, kind of going back to what you've said and what Lugs have said. Obviously, they feel they have to make money because obviously not just in terms of athletics, what I guess some of the money that gets given back to the schools or gets cut off and then is used by other sports programs at the schools, like they need to generate that money. That being said, it feels unreasonable to have a sport while this thing has not been put under control at all.
All right, let's move on to our third topic. You know them, and you either love them or hate them. It's the teams of the NFC East, the New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles, Dallas Cowboys, and Washington. New names. Who do we like? How do we see it? Let's break it down. Here we go. NFC East.
Cowboys are the cream of the crop, I think, this year. You got probably the best quarterback tandem in the NFL, Prescott and Dalton. So I'll start there. Plus, they've got Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, CeCe Lamb, Benzel Bryant, wide receiver. For me, the only drawback with Cowboys is Mike McCarthy as a head coach. Is he going to vanilla up that offense like Green Bay, or is he going to let Kellen Moore run the thing? So that would be my question about the Cowboys.
But the man Moore is a nice-looking windbreaker, doesn't he? Oh, Mike McCarthy.
Oh yeah,
he's grayed out.
Yeah.
So he's more Saban-like now. He's allowed himself. He took out the was it Just for Men?
Grecian.
He was wearing Just for Men. The last few years he was, and now he's let it grayed out, and everyone's like, oh, he's smarter now.
He's intelligent.
He's wearing glasses, and then people are like, oh, he's an innovator.
He's wise.
Grasshopper. I would say again, I'll break down like just different aspects.
Please.
I'll say Doug Peterson is the best coach in the division. I think with the Eagles, I think he's made the playoffs 3 straight years. And if you kind of look at it every year, like you want to talk about them even getting the playoffs every year, like it's what can go wrong. I mean, last year they had no wide receivers. 2 years before that, when they won the Super Bowl with their backup quarterback, Carson Wentz was on his way to being the MVP of the league. And in week 15, I believe, tore up his knee, was out, and then they had to go to a cold backup and won the Super Bowl. And then the year before, Carson Wentz was playing, and again, late in the year, he gets injured, and they have to put in Nick Foles again. So, like, they have accomplished what they have is actually amazing, and it goes back to him. Best offense, I'll let you all say yours. I know which one I think is the best one.
Well, I've already said I think it's Cowboys.
I agree. It's the Cowboys. I mean, it's Dak with Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, their third receiver, who actually had more yards receiving than Amari Cooper last year. Blake Jarwin, who they paid decent money to step up and be their starting tight end. Ezekiel Elliott, and even behind Ezekiel Elliott, if you watched last year, Tony Pollard looks like a star, their backup running back. It's just with their defense is they have some good pieces. It's just their hope. There's a lot of ifs. If this guy